Tonight, we're diving into something that affects a lot of us, but we don't always talk about: nightmare disorder. We're going to look at what it actually is, what's happening inside our brains when it hits, and, most importantly, how you can reclaim your sleep.
You know the feeling, right? You jolt awake, your heart is absolutely pounding in your chest, and you still have that chilling feeling from a really bad dream clinging to you. It's a pretty universal human experience.
And look, let's get this out of the way right now. Having a scary dream every now and then is totally normal. It happens to most of us. But to really understand when it crosses a line, we first have to know where these dreams even come from.
So our journey into all of this really begins in one specific phase of our sleep cycle. This is the place where our most vivid and sometimes our most terrifying stories unfold.
And that place is REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement. It's this fascinating state where your brain is incredibly active, almost like you're awake, but at the same time, your body's muscles are temporarily paralyzed, which is probably a good thing, to keep us from literally acting out our dreams. This is the main stage for all those emotional, story-like dreams we have.
Okay, so if the occasional nightmare is normal, when does it actually cross the line? When does a bad dream stop being just a bad dream and become something more? Well, this is where we shift from a common experience to a diagnosable disorder.
The real difference here comes down to two things: repetition and impact. For something to be considered nightmare disorder, the dreams have to be happening over and over again, and they have to be deeply upsetting, usually with themes about your survival or your safety. A key thing is that you wake up from them fully alert, you remember the dream in detail, and, crucially, it starts causing real problems in your waking life. Now, this brings up something that gets confused all the time. Nightmares are not the same as night terrors. They're totally different. Nightmares happen during REM sleep, usually later in the night. You wake up alert, you remember what happened. Night terrors, on the other hand, happen in deep, non-REM sleep. Someone having one might scream or trash around, but when they wake up, they're often just confused and have little to no memory of it. So that is a really critical distinction to make.
So what is actually going on up there in our heads that creates such intense fear while we're supposed to be resting? Let's take a look at the science behind it.
A really great way to think about this is that during REM sleep, the emotional engine of your brain is firing on all cylinders. It's going full throttle. But the logical part of your brain, the part that acts like the brakes, has pretty much taken the night off. And you can see that imbalance right here. Your amygdala, which is basically the brain's fear center, is highly active. Your limbic system, the whole emotional hub, is lit up too. But the prefrontal cortex, the part that would normally step in and say, hey, chill out, this isn't real, its activity is way down. This creates the absolute perfect storm for intense, unfiltered fear.
So, what kind of things can trigger this? Well, it's probably no surprise that high stress and trauma, especially something like PTSD, are major factors. But so are things like anxiety and depression, or even just not getting enough sleep. Throw in irregular sleep schedules, certain medications, and even withdrawal from alcohol, and you can see how connected our waking life is to what happens when we're asleep.
And the thing is, the impact of all this doesn't just stop when the alarm clock goes off. For a lot of people, it creates this awful, self-perpetuating cycle of fear that just spills right over into the daytime. It starts with a very simple and totally understandable fear. You start to dread going to bed. You begin to associate your own bed with terror. So you do what anyone would do. You start putting it off, staying up later and later, just trying to avoid it.
But here's the really cruel twist. When you deprive yourself of sleep, your brain tries to make up for lost time. The next time you finally do fall asleep, you experience something called REM rebound. This is where your REM sleep becomes longer and way more intense, creating an even better environment for those vivid nightmares to thrive.
So the very thing you're doing to avoid the nightmares, avoiding sleep, is actually making them more likely to happen and even more terrifying when they do. This just reinforces the fear of sleep, and the cycle tightens its grip.
And the consequences during the day are huge. We're talking about serious fatigue, anxiety that just gets worse, mood problems, and real trouble concentrating. It's not just about one bad night's sleep. It becomes a compromised day, over and over and over again.
Okay, but this right here is the most important part of our whole conversation. This is not a life sentence. There are powerful, scientifically backed ways to break this cycle and to take back control of your nights. There is hope.
So here's the key takeaway. Before even thinking about medication, the research is crystal clear that psychological therapies are incredibly effective. In fact, they're the recommended first-line treatment. And there's one in particular that really stands out.
It's called imagery rehearsal therapy, or IRT, and it's a way of actively retraining your brain. Sounds complicated, but the process is actually pretty straightforward. First, you write down the nightmare in as much detail as you can. Then, and this is the cool part, you consciously rewrite the story. You change the scary part to something neutral or even something positive. And then, during the day, you mentally rehearse this new, safer version of the dream. You are literally giving your brain a new script to follow at night.
Now, alongside a powerful therapy like IRT, the basics really matter. Things like having a consistent sleep schedule that helps regulate your sleep cycles, finding ways to reduce stress before bed, practicing relaxation, and maybe not watching a terrifying movie right before you close your eyes. All of this helps create a calmer entry into sleep. And it's also so important to check for other issues, like sleep apnea, which can make things worse.
I really want this to sink in. Having nightmare disorder is not a personal failing. It's not a character flaw or a sign of weakness. It is a treatable sleep disorder. It's about how the brain is regulating emotion during sleep. There is a path forward, and asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
So let's just end with this thought. Imagine a night that's free from fear. Imagine waking up feeling actually rested, restored. What could that kind of sleep unlock in your waking life? It's a powerful question to think about, and the best part is, for people with nightmare disorder, it's an absolutely achievable reality.